Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Shadows of the Lost. Episode 2. Chapter 9. I hadn't been able to sleep properly. Both Alejandro and I had tossed and turned. The sun hadn't risen, but I sat up, picking up the pad and forcing myself to write the second message. I was halfway through it when Alejandro woke up. We had barely slept, although we had been trying to sleep for the last 4 hours. How could we sleep when our baby girl was somewhere all alone? I knew he wanted to get back out there to look for our pup. His arm was around me, his hand over mine as I wrote the words, painstakingly slow. The sparks of his touch were like the comfort of warmth on a winter day. He didn't speak, simply placing a few comforting kisses on my neck and shoulder. A debt must always be repaid, by blood or by life. I had done it. I gasped, dropping the pen. Alejandro instantly grabbed some napkins from the tray of leftover food from last night and dabbed them gently over my bleeding hand, then over the paper smeared with blood. This person's got some problem with me. A debt? What are they going on about? I closed my eyes, leaning against his shoulder. My intuition was doing nothing to help. I hated this. I don't know, but it could be decades old. The witches should be here soon, and I need to make the recording to put out there for the kidnappers' demands before they get here. He said quietly. I nodded, and he gave me a deep kiss before we both got up, ready to face the day and find answers. He left first after washing and dressing. I washed my face and brushed my teeth, rummaging through the suitcase I had grabbed from the other room last night, pulling on some shorts and an oversized top. I didn't want to wear any of these tops. I didn't wish to care about any of this colorful crap, but it was all I had brought along. Who would have thought our family trip for the girl's birthday would end like this? How had Catalia spent the night? My stomach twisted, and I felt sick with worry. She was out there. I had just left the room, carrying the tray of leftovers from last night, when Mom stepped out of Skyla's room, although it wasn't even dawn yet. It seemed I wasn't the only one who couldn't sleep. Kia. She smiled softly at me and came over, running her fingers through my hair. Oh yeah. I hadn't combed it, we will find her. She said, determination blazing in her sage green eyes. I nodded as she took the tray from me. I know. Sky is asleep, I'll keep an eye on her. Thank you. I'm just going to go check on Dante and Del. She nodded, and we both went our separate ways. I knocked lightly on the door but heard no reply. I slowly opened the door to see the bathroom door was shut and the shower was on. Both Dulsanra and Dante lay there in the same state as yesterday. I sat on the bed, placing my hands on their chests as I poured my healing into them. Still nothing, I sighed, staring down at Dante with sadness in my eyes. The bathroom door opened, and Rayhan stepped out, wearing only his pants and a towel around his shoulders. Seems like everyone's up early, he said, pulling on his shirt. I nodded and pointed to the wardrobe. Alejandro has some clothes in there if you need anything. I stood up, looking down at the two. Was there any change at night? Nothing at all. I sighed heavily, feeling restless. I needed to make myself useful. Have you asked Maria about the kids? I asked, feeling another flash of guilt rush through me. He nodded. They're delicate, our eyes gone down. They'll be all right. Thanks. I sighed. I'll leave you to it, have breakfast before you head out. He nodded, and I left the room, heading downstairs. I paused at the open archway to the sitting area. Alejandro was seated there, his face emotionless and cold as he looked directly at the laptop screen. Darien was standing to the side, out of view of the camera. All means. If it's revenge or a debt, I'm who you want. Whatever your demand is, I'm ready to accept it. Just make sure the child is unharmed. Money, power, or if I'm your goal, the word, and I'm yours, he said. His face was emotionless, his eyes hard and cold. If I didn't know him better, one would think he wasn't bothered about losing his child or that he didn't have a heart. Even though his words said otherwise, his cold and uncaring demeanor remained. I'll await your demand. He switched it off and ran a hand through his hair before lighting a cigarette. His eyes met mine, and I gave him a small forced smile before heading to the kitchen where Mom and Serena, Darien's mate, who must have come sometime last night, were making breakfast. Kia, she said, brushing back a strand of her blonde hair and hugging me tightly. Serena, I hugged her back, not saying anything, before pulling away and began helping. I knew the men were leaving soon. Liam had already gone, and I wanted to go too. I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I took a plate to the lounge, where Alejandro was smoking at the open patio doors. Using a phone with the other hand, a frown on his face. Baby. He glanced at me, and I raised the plate in a gesture for him to eat. I'm not hung, forgot Alia. That stopped him, and he comes with you. I want to search for her too. They took a slice of toast, biting into it. I want tea. No. We can't risk it if something happens to you, Al. She's my daughter too. I can't just sit by when I'm worried for you, everyone, and my baby girl. No. I'm not risking it. Al. I want to go. I pleaded, feeling a sting of pain at his blatant refusal. And I said no, I'm not having someone else I love out there. Excuse me? Rayhan is out there. Is this because I'm a woman and should stay holed up inside? I exclaimed. Didn't he understand that I can't stay still and do nothing? Think of it however you want. You are not leaving this villa. His tone was cold and final, and when his piercing black eyes met mine, I knew he wouldn't budge. His words stung, and I pressed my lips together. I am strong and will not sit by and let my daughter suffer while I play the helpless, worried mother. I snapped, my irritation brimming over the surface. Kiera. This is about playing safe. He said quietly, glancing at the open archway, but I didn't care who heard. I will not play safe when my daughter is out there. My voice shook, and my vision blurred. You will. My eyes flashed as I glared at him through my tears. I was a queen, and I was not going to back down. Kia, he put his phone away, reaching for me, but I stepped out of his reach, shaking my head. What about you? Don't you think it hurts me, too, knowing that you might be sacrificing yourself? Do you see me complaining? I'm her father and I'm her mother. I cried as he grabbed hold of my arms. I know, amor mio, and you constantly will be, but I must do this for my family. To be sane out there, I need to know that the rest of you are safe. He said coldly, despite his quiet voice, one hand forcing my chin up to look at him. I refused to, staring past his head. We aren't safe here either. For goddess's sake, Alejandro, they were here. They placed those letters. I am a blessed wolf, the queen, above all, I'm her mother. I can't just sit back and do nothing. His eyes flashed red, his brows furrowing. I know, but it's safer here than out there. Besides, the witches are coming, and I need you here. They won't be here forever. I replied. We are not doing this, you ain't going. I ripped free from his hold, glaring at him. Kia. Whatever. I shook my head, turning and storming out of the room, not caring for the men and few women ready to leave with Alejandro. I am not going just to sit here and do stuck all. Kiera. Mom's voice broke me out of my rage, and I knew she had heard the argument. I disagree with him, but he has a point. He won't be able to focus knowing you are out there. That's not my problem. I whispered, brushing past her, my heart clenching with pain at my harsh words. Kiera. Mom called, but I refused to look or listen to anyone when Skyla's little voice called me. Mama. I turned, my heart breaking at the sight of her sorrow-filled face. Darling. I whispered, rushing up the stairs. I hugged her tightly. Mama, Catalia, she whispered. We are going to find her. I reassured her, trying to hide my tears. And bring her home. I promise. Alejandro's voice came from behind me. I tensed, feeling guilt fill me as he crouched down, placing a hand on my back, his other arm wrapping around Skyla and my shoulder. He kissed her forehead before looking at me. Forgive me, amor mio, he leaned over, kissing my lips passionately. I kissed him back slowly, looking up at him as he moved away, brushing away a stray tear from my cheek before he stood up and took the steps down 3 at a time. I will give them 3 hours if there's nothing, then I was going to go, and no one would stop me from looking for my daughter. He stopped at the door and, turning, his gaze met mine. I love you, amor mio. I love you too. He gave me one of his smirks before disappearing just as the sun began to rise outside. Sky, Kia, how about some breakfast? Mom asked. I nodded, lifting Skyla. Mama, I'm not a baby. She whispered, and I frowned, concerned at her words. I know, baby, but can't I carry you? I asked her as she led the way down the stairs. No. I'm a big girl, I'm going to be strong, like Catalia. She whispered, her eyes saddening. You are both strong. I gently squeezed her hand, following Mom into the kitchen. Will Dante wake up? I promise I won't call him a dum-dum again. Skyla asked, climbing onto one of the bar stools as Serena placed a plate of food in front of her. He will. I said, smiling gently at her, taking a seat but refusing the breakfast plate Serena offered me, instead just picking up the mug of mocha Mom had passed me. Now eat up so you can get dressed and watch some TV. I was very aware of Julio and several guards inside the house, all on alert. Once Serena took Skyla to get dressed, Mom turned to me, concern evident on her gorgeous face. You know, Alejandro will do his best. Number one, I know, Mom, but I can use my abilities too. Liam's there. He is intuitive, too. Keep faith, Kia, and trust in them. Mom, if it were you, would you just sit at home? I asked, frowning. The sunlight bathed the counter, and if one didn't know better, one would never think there was so much conflict and trouble within the walls of this villa. She looked down before giving me a small, faint smile and shaking her head. No, but from a wiser person's point of view, don't be reckless. You're contradicting yourself, Mom. But please, listen to him. She persisted. I'm giving him time. I said quietly. I turned towards the window, feeling the witches approach. Mom hadn't sensed them. They're here. Mom looked up sharply, her heart skipping a beat, and I knew she was hoping that the witches had some answers to what was happening to Dante and Dulsanra. I left the kitchen, hurrying to the front door, and pulled it open, looking at the two older women who stood before me. High Witch Magdalene, High Witch Janina. I lowered my head slightly in respect, and both women did the same to me. Janina had once been a lone witch. When Rayhan found his mate, Dulsanra, we ended up being at peace with the witches. Janina was Dulsanra's paternal aunt, although she disliked talking about it. She was also the one who gave me the necklace that Dante now wore to conceal his aura. Would you like a drink, or shall we head upstairs? I asked. Let's not waste time. Magdalene said, waving her hand, and the door shut behind them. She observed the guards around the hall as I led the way upstairs. What exactly happened? Janina asked, and I swiftly filled them in on what I knew, how Dulsanra's spell seemed to backfire and the ominous feeling I had felt in the room. A presence? She asked sharply as I opened the door to the bedroom. Yes, I felt like there was something here. I admitted, my eyes falling on the two on the bed, the red veins covering their entire skin. Magdalene sucked in a breath while Janina frowned deeply. They are cursed. Magdalene stated the moment she looked down at the sleeping duo. It was a natural mistake for Dulsanra Silver to make. Her ability of darkness and fire, if you use the wrong magic against a curse, it only strengthens it. Neither she nor Serafina could break this curse, for it is only fueled by the element of fire. Then can you help? I asked. She paused and sighed. We need the talisman where the curse was cast upon. In this case, it may have been a weapon or something, whatever made contact with the prince. Alejandro said a wolf attacked him, and he killed that wolf. I added, looking down at Dante, whose skin looked grey. Then it's a loss. The only one who can break it is the caster. Janina murmured. So, until then, what can we do? We could try to see if we can at least ease the effect of it, maybe to the point of bringing them to consciousness. Magdalene muttered, placing a finger on Dulsanra's forehead. She frowned, and I felt power emanate from her. She jerked back suddenly, almost as if she had been burned, clutching her hand. Odd, what is it? This is not the doing of any witch or necromancer. Magdalene said in a hushed tone. Then what is it? I asked, fear filling me. A demon. But from the look on both their almost emotionless faces, I knew there was a lot more to it than that, and something told me it was not going to be good. This is worse than we thought, isn't it? Demons are rare, and if a demon cast this, and I'm sure it was, then finding the one behind it will be rather tricky, even for us. I closed my eyes, wishing that was not the case. Is there no other way? Of course, there is finding the one who summoned the demon. If we find him, then we see the rest of the answers. Magdalene stated, smoothing out the sleeve of her dress. The two women exchanged looks. I knew they were keeping something from me. There's more to it, isn't there? Tell me. I asked sharply, just as Mom entered. Janina sighed heavily. If anyone else had performed this spell, or any spell for that matter, trying to lift the curse, they would have died instantly. The only reason Dulsanra survived is because of her demon side. Her words made my blood run cold. I felt as if I had been slapped across the face. Goddess! My heart was thundering erratically, thinking of the consequences of what could have happened. I had called her here, she could have died. Mom placed her arm around me, and for a moment, I took comfort in her touch before I walked over to Dulsanra, thinking of what could have happened. What do you propose? Mom asked them. We shall perform a spell to bring them to consciousness simply, however, they will remain cursed. That means hallucinations, weakness, and whatever other side effects there may be. I can't be entirely sure. Magdalene said quietly. Are they not better off staying unconscious, then? Mom asked. No, there is a chance they will begin to lose their minds if this continues. Time will run out. We need to ensure the curse is broken before then, but how long that may take, I am not sure. Whoever is behind this, planned it very carefully. Magdalene continued. Janina sighed, someone strong enough to summon demons and to have them do their bidding. That's a first. We all know what happened the one time our kind tried that. Male demons are tough to capture, to think they made a deal with them. It has to be a jinn, regular monsters are more childlike, you could say, they don't feel like humans. Then there are the jinn. How they managed to get a hold of one, however, is beyond me. He must have paid an extremely high price, Magdalene murmured. Frowning. So, is the enemy a witch? I asked. We cannot say for sure, but if it is not anyone we know of. Someone of this, she replied. Caliber, is not from our coven. I listened to them, my mind made up, I was going to have to find this person. They left a message. I reached into my pocket, grabbed my shattered phone, and held up the picture of the notepad where I had written the two sentences. Janina took the phone from me, and they both read it, looking thoughtful. The Crimson King, I haven't heard of anyone by the name. We can check if we can find anything on him via magic. For now, let's perform the spell her hand. Janina remarked when Magdalene raised mused. Wait. I feel like I may have heard the term somewhere. I will look into it. She nodded, watching both women get to work. Individually, they may not be as powerful as Dulsanra, who was at a caliber on their side. Beyond even the most powerful witches, yet it was clear they had experienced WITH each passing moment as I looked upon the two forms on the bed, their hearts beating fast and those dark, angry veins lined their skin. I knew that I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here and allow everyone else to be out there. The two high witches had been in the spell for a while. It took them almost an hour to steady Dante and Dulsanra's heartbeats. I left briefly to check on Skyla while Mom got the witches some refreshments despite both being in full concentration mode. When Dulsanra and Dante's eyes flew open simultaneously, they blazed red as they looked around. The veins remained on their bodies and their skin level remained ashy, yet their heartbeats were Mom. Dante croaked as I rushed to the edge of the magic trigram surrounding them. "Baby, you're going to be okay," I whispered, relief flooding me. I fought back my tears. His eyes met mine, around tensing, confusion clear in them as he looked. "They're coming," he croaked. "Who is?" Magdalene asked sharply. "The wolves of fire," he murmured. I exchanged looks with Mom, turning back to him. His eyes closed, and he took a deep breath. Anything Dante said that wasn't in normal conversation was not something to sideline. His intuition was far more robust than mine or Liam's. "I see the boy is special," Magdalene said keenly. I did trust her, but I wasn't entirely comfortable with them knowing about my son's ability. Dante knew I was having twin baby girls when I had first found out I was pregnant. Janina had given me the amulet that Dante always wore, and she must have seen it. I'm sure she had her assumptions. "Dulsanra," I called, turning towards the white-haired beauty. She looked at me and gave a small, weak smile. "Sorry, I just caused you more work." I messed up, and couldn't help him. He stroked his hair. She looked at Dante, reaching over, and for once, he didn't blush or pout, instead dark with thought. Stared ahead, his face deathly in his eyes. "They won't be able to do much, but they are conscious now. You are on a short-term leash, Queen Kiera." Magdalene's words held the weight of reality in them. If I had any doubt, it was gone. I had to do something. As the Lichen King asked, he wished for some protective spells to be placed around the Night Walker pack. So, without further ado, we should head there. I'm sure it will also be safer for you all," she continued. I nodded. They were right. Returning to the pack would mean better security, and I would decide what to do from there. I kissed Dante's cheek before hugging Dulsanra. "Want to talk to Aaron and Sienna?" I asked her softly. Concern filled her eyes, and she nodded. "How long have we been out?" "A day," I replied, taking the water bottle from Mom and holding it to her lips as Mom helped Dante drink. "Not too long." She seemed relieved. She was a mother, too, and her pups were still so young. "I will pass the message to Alejandro," I said, deciding to reach out to the nearest 04 men who formed a chain of communication that reached each wolf out there searching. "Let Alejandro know we are returning home with the witches. Julio and Philip will keep an eye on the villa in case something else odd shows up. Also, let him and Rayhan know that Dante and Dulsanra are now conscious." "Understood, Luna, that is great news." Night had fallen, and I had just put Skyla and Dante to bed. Mom would watch them. As much as I didn't want to leave them, I had to. I had made my decision. Dulsanra was here. However, Rayhana had brought her pups to see her and to check on Skyla and Dante. I felt better being at home, in the comfort and safety of our mansion. Alejandro had called at one point to speak to Dante, and I had filled him in on everything the witches had said. They had put some protective spells in place before they'd left with a promise to look into the Crimson King. It was silent now, with everyone having settled down for the night. Mom would sleep in Dante's room. I was meant to be sleeping with Skyla. However, I would tell Serena before I left and order her to stay with Skyla. I brushed my fingers through Dante's hair, having slipped a small note under his pillow, letting him know I'd be back soon. I was leaving the room when Mom stepped out of the adjoining bathroom. One Enya, I turned as she toweled her vibrant red hair with a navy towel. She didn't speak. Her eyes were locked with mine, as if she was peering into my mother, right? Soul. You can't hide things from your. Are you heading to bed? She asked after a moment. That was not what she was about to say. Yeah, I'm just going to shower and then get some rest. I turned the door handle. Hidden. I looked at her, and I knew at that moment she knew I was going to go. I didn't reply as we stared at each other. I saw her concern and worry, too, but mixed in with it was the conflict of letting it slide. I am not a child, nor am I just a trophy on my king's arm. I am a fighter, a queen, and above all, a mother. I replied quietly, staring at the handle I was still holding onto. I know, take care of yourself. She replied quietly. I didn't answer, casting her a small smile and leaving the room. I returned to my own, where Skyla was fast asleep. I sat down on my bed, brushing my fingers through her lengthy hair, and sighing heavily. I will be back soon. I didn't want her to get scared, but I needed Catalia home. Mama? She asked sleepily, her eyes fluttering open. Darling, I'm here, but I'm going to go find Kat, okay? I whispered, bending down and kissing her forehead. She looked at me, frowning as she took in what I had just said, sleep vanishing from her eyes before she nodded determinedly. Okay, Mama. She replied. Be a good girl for Mama Red, okay? That's what they called Mom. Skyla had started it off, and even Dante, who used to be Red. Call her Grandma now, I will, Mama, I love you. She sat up, around her, hugging me tightly as I wrapped my arms. I love you too, baby, you, Kat, Dante, Daddy. I kissed her cheek before she lay back down. Tomorrow. I know, Mama. Will you come home? I'll go home when I find Kat, okay? Okay. Mama is strong. I hope so. I just needed to find my baby. Sleep. I will stay here until you fall asleep, okay? Want me to sing to you? Yes, Mama, a Disney song, please. Savages. From Pocahontas. I laughed lightly, only Skyla would choose such a song. I began singing the song, and she joined in with the chorus. Savages. Savages. I don't think this song was the best choice to make someone go to sleep, but if this was what she wanted, then so be it. She soon settled down as I sang softly despite her choice. 11 Mama, those wolves were savages. She murmured drowsily. I frowned. Yeah, they were inhumane. Back. I will do what I can, and I will bring her. I know my love. Now sleep. Night, Mama. She fell asleep. I stood up, ready to pack myself a bag and get out of there. I grabbed 2 outfits, a wireless charging pad, and my phone. I slid my wedding and engagement ring off, placing it on the chest of drawers. Gazing down at them, I felt a pang of pain. Forgive me, Alejandro. I mind-linked Serena, asking her to come to my bedroom. Everything okay, Kiera? She asked me when she walked in after a light knock. I need you to stay with Skyla. She raised her eyebrows questioningly before her eyes widened in shock as realization sunk in. Kiera, you aren't. Just do as I say, please. Good night, Serena. I cut her off. I didn't want Al to take his anger out on her when he finds it. I gave her a small smile, hoping she understood, before I left the room and headed to Alejandro's office. I needed to grab my stuff, then some poisons and antidotes. I walked down the quiet halls, memories of Alejandro chasing the girls down this very hall when they wanted him to play the wolf and they were the Little Red Riding Hood twins made me smile. I remember he shifted to make them happy when they begged him to. Their shrieks of fear and excitement as he chased them ever so slowly, although they had run as fast as their little feet could take them, their little red capes flying behind them made them super happy. Soon, I hoped we had that back in this home. All 5 of us together again, safe and comfortable. I keyed in Alejandro's office code. The beep sounded extremely loud in the silent hall. I glanced down the aisle, knowing that the guards were posted everywhere. Sure enough, one of them appeared instantly. Seeing me, he relaxed, and I gave a smooth smile. I knew I was going to have to knock 1 or 2 out on my way because there was no way Alejandro hadn't told them to keep an eye on me. I was not going to be a prisoner in my own home. I shut the door behind me, glancing around the office. It was decorated in browns and blacks with a large desk and a chair, sofas stood to the side, and shelves lined one wall. His scent lingered here, and my heart clenched, knowing I would hurt him by doing this. I just hoped he understood when he calmed down that I had to do this. I walked to the far wall where the massive shelves lined the wall and moved aside a few items, then pressed a particular area. It popped open, revealing a keypad. Keying in the code, I stepped back as the wall on the left moved slightly. I walked over to it, pushing it wider and stepping inside. The automatic lights came on, and I deactivated the alarm system and scanned my fingerprint before the red sensors vanished. I stepped forward, sparing the door to the vault on one side a glance, but then I walked down the left side to the room containing poisons, weapons, and antidotes. Although most of this stuff was kept under security at the park headquarters, we had some at home. I took my metal staff that would become triple its size with a sharp tip on each side if I pressed the button in the middle. I grabbed some antidotes and poisons, a few anti-sentry sprays, and several magic talismans that Dulsanra and Rehana had made for us. Okay, I think I'm sorted. I filled my bag and returned to his office. Placing the bag down, I sank into his leather chair, picked up a pen, and rummaged around for some paper, ready to pen him a note and promise to stay in touch via phone. I wasn't sure he'd even see the note, considering he said he wouldn't be back, but still, just in case. I had snuck away from the mansion with the help of an anti-scent spray after grabbing some food from the kitchen. I only had to knock one guard unconscious before I shifted, holding my bag in my mouth as I ran into the dark, the urge to veins. Find my little princess rushing through me. I'm coming, Catalia. I relaxed my mind, letting the glow of the shining moon sink into my white fur. Praying that Selene guided me to her, I had nothing in mind, no destination, but to follow my instincts. My wolf was on edge, reeling to go, and I knew she wanted to find our pup just as much as I did. I was heading south, and I sped up, not stopping. Suppose I was being guided, that's where I'd go. It was all I could follow anyway, and I just prayed it was the right way. I will find you, my baby. I promise. I frowned, watching my father pace the room angrily as I stood against the wall, chin up, shoulders back, hands crossed behind my back, ready and paying attention to whatever he might say. He took his jacket and gloves off, revealing his burnt skin. The side of his face was burned, too, but it wasn't as bad as the rest of his body. People found him quite scary, with his skin all raw and burnt. The burns didn't look normal either, they had an angry red shade despite being there since I was born. But father was still the best, the strongest. I asked you, men, to bring me the boy. Father hissed, staring at the four men who looked almost identical to each other, with their flaming red hair and pale orangey eyes. Power exuded from them, but it didn't match father's, anywhere close. Alpha, we tried, but he wasn't making it easy, the boy or this girl. Did I ask you to talk back? Father spat, his powerful aura blanketing the room. I looked down, no matter how angry he was, he wouldn't hurt me. I kept my gaze straight ahead when Dad ripped through one of their necks. The gargling sound of choking and the strong smell of metallic blood filled the room, and I swallowed, trying not to gag. Father wanted me here, so I learned how to keep order within our people. Father was strict and dangerous, he was the perfect alpha one I wanted to become, just like when I was old enough. He was my role model, a true king. I glanced at the body of the man he had killed emotionlessly. Tell me, my Joe, what do we do if an order is given? Father's cold glare was on me, and I smiled confidently, ensuring no emotion reached my eyes. We complete it by all means necessary, there is no such thing as failure. I replied emotionlessly. That's my son. Father's glare returned to the other three men. The girl is useless, without even an ounce of power or aura within her. The Leakin won't care if she's collateral damage, she's not his heir. King, forgive me for speaking up, but from what we have been told, the Leakin loves his children, I think he will want her back. One of the men replied quietly. Father's lips curled in disgust, his burned skin stretching as he did so. She's a girl. I don't think anyone will come for her. She is useless to me. I frowned, tilting my head. A girl? I didn't know that they had managed to bring one of the Leakin's children, albeit the wrong one. I had heard of his abilities, even from across the ocean. He was said to be a force to be reckoned with. Well, I guess he hasn't met father, Padre, it's worth a try. If it doesn't work, just kill her and send him the video. I shrugged. Father smirked coldly, his eyes full of burning rage and pride. That's an idea. He turned his gaze on the other three, his hatred and anger growing tenfold. I frowned. I wanted to see this girl. The child of a Leakin. Was she powerful? Although I'm only 10, people say they can already sense my aura. May I see her? Father looked at me, frowning as if he had not expected that request. Very well, you may. He said, take him. One of the men nodded, bowing his head to father before I made my way out of the room, pausing for him to walk ahead and lead the way. I had no idea where she was kept after all. I won't deny that I was curious to see her. Alpha Prince, she's in the basement. I raised an eyebrow with curiosity. A basement in this place? I didn't even know there was one. We had away from home for the last year. But father had important work here, especially with this Leakin. We walked through the pantry, and Rodrigo unlocked the considerable padlock. I was a little curious, if she was nothing special, why was she kept under such security? The metal door screeched open. I'll manage alone from here, Rodrigo. Wait upstairs. I said emotionlessly. I wasn't sure how old she was, but I was sure even if she was older than me, I could take her if she tried anything funny. Rodrigo thought the same, as he didn't argue. I walked down the stairs, the scent of cherry blossoms and soft cotton breeze filled my nose, and I frowned. This wasn't exactly what I expected a Leakin's hybrid to smell like. I scanned the darkness down below. A slight arch led to the toilet and sink, but the rest of the room was empty. I heard a gasp and a cut-off whimper, so I raised my eyebrow. Where was she? I paused when I saw her huddled in the corner, her hands clamped over her mouth and wide doe eyes that stared back at me with fear. I barely hid my surprise. She was young, really young. She seemed confused as she looked me over, and I realized I hadn't even been able to sense her until I spotted her. Strange. Her long, light brown hair was a mess, but I could tell she was a pampered little princess from her dress. Please don't hurt me, she whispered. Her voice was soft, too, like her scent. Gentle and full of emotions. I didn't hear it often. It was strange. Who would have thought the Leakin's daughter would be so much of a disappointment? I was expecting someone brave, strong, and unyielding. How pathetic. At that age, I had already killed. I don't hit girls, I stated arrogantly, crossing my arms as I approached her. Stand up. I commanded coldly. Her eyes widened, impossibly large, her heart thumping. I realized when I entered that I hadn't heard it either. So, she wasn't wholly ordinary. Wait, was it possible she was hiding her abilities? She obeyed, standing up quickly. To my surprise, she held my gaze. So she was indeed the Leakin's child. Usually, people would look away. She looked around 7, I think. I had to admit she was cute, pretty even, unlike the picture I saw of the Leakin. Was she his daughter? Is your father the Leakin king? I asked. She nodded. Yes. You don't look like him. She blinked, and I shook my head. Of course, she doesn't look like a grown man. I sounded foolish. Have you been given food? I changed the subject, hiding my blunder. I wasn't sure why I even asked. I remembered what I told father about killing her, but at the time, I didn't think she would be so little, and innocent. Father would kill her if he deemed it was best. No. She replied. I didn't reply, it wasn't my business. I was about to leave when she spoke. Will they let me go? She asked softly. No. I stated emotionlessly. Oh. Her voice trembled, and I walked to the stairs swiftly. I shouldn't stay here longer than necessary. I will see if you are allowed food. I said simply before exiting and slamming the door behind me. Young master, I doubt she is permitted to have food. Rodrigo said, bowing his head. I didn't ask you for your opinion. I replied coldly, walking off. If she isn't allowed food, then she isn't. I didn't care. Then why couldn't I shake the thought out of my head? Alejandro, another day had gone by, but nothing. I was not far from Marcel's pack and decided to stop by. He had joined on the search and told me I needed a break. As much as I didn't want to stop for the night, I knew I had to keep my energy up. The search for Catalia was not going to stop. When we stopped, others took our place. There wasn't anything solid yet, but we did get some information on some odd events over the last few months, and at WA down south, so let's see. I walked through the vast silver gates of the Sangui pack with Marcel at my side, everyone bowing their heads to us as we passed. They had come a long way since they first became a proper pack. They were like any other pack now, despite being rogues. Marcel had done an excellent job and had managed to bring the unruly wolves under his control. Despite being manipulated by our mother and under her control, he had been strong enough not to let it get to his head. This pack was seen as the outcasts by many. Over the years, that image faded, and people weren't treating them as poorly or as coldly as they once were, but despite that, the seed of hatred lingered in the form of none other than my nephew, Leo Rossi. Even now, when we enter Marcel's mansion, he comes down the staircase and pauses, pushing up his sleeves. Like me, he was tatted all over. His pale blue eyes only seemed to get paler and colder as the years passed. He was 17 now, but he was almost as tall as I was. His chocolate brown hair only added a few inches, too. Alejandro. His icy voice came. Leo, good to see you. You've grown a few inches. I replied, giving him a smirk despite how worried I was about Catalia. His face didn't change, but he gave me a curt nod. I'm out. He told his father. Leo, stay for dinner. Your cousin Catalia's still not found. Perhaps you can give some insight. Marcel suggested quietly. He raised his eyebrow. And that's my issue, why? I frowned, my anger flaring up, but I wouldn't lash out when that's what he wanted. I saw myself in him, and it wasn't a pretty sight. Raphael had been there for me when I let the darkness consume me, and I intended to be there for Leo continuously, even if I wanted to smack over the head most of the time. Leo. Marcel growled. What? Will eating together solve the issue? I don't think so. He scoffed before pushing past his dad and walking out. The door slammed shut behind him. He's getting worse. The only thing I can pride him on is that he is fair regarding the pack and studying hard. Marcel growled. It's that age. I'm sure he'll come around, that, or he'll get a mate who will whip him into shape. I want to see what girl can do that. She's going to have to be highly strong-willed. Marcel sighed. Yeah, someone like Kiera. I don't know how she fixed me up. I agreed coldly, needing a cigarette. Marcel chuckled dryly. Well, the Westwood women are something else. Yeah, they are. Scarlett is even more feisty and equally headstrong as her daughter. I glanced over at him. He looked aged despite being only 6 years older than me. He had lost his mate. These signs were bound to catch up. Second chance mates existed. But not everyone got one. Life sucked. If he took a chosen one, maybe things would get easier. But I also knew this was Marcel. He wasn't over her. Many alphas took chosen mates to keep their sanity. Come, I'll show you to a room where you can shower, and then dinner will be ready. I nodded, allowing him to lead the way. Once one was left alone in a guest room, I took my phone from my oversized shorts pocket. First, I checked for updates from the other men and filled them in on where I was and the plans for tomorrow. One sat down on the bed, lying back, feeling the tiredness in my bones. I needed to talk to my queen. How was she coping? Were the kids and Dell doing okay? I called her, frowning when it went straight to the answering machine. Why was it turned off? I tried again, nothing. I sat up, dialing Darien. He should be there. His phone rang, but he didn't answer. Worry began consuming me, and 1,000 scenarios rushed through my head. Did something happen? The only thing keeping me from losing my shit was I hadn't felt anything through the link. I rang Scarlett next, my heart racing as I tried to tell myself they were okay. The witches did a spell, right? Nothing should have happened. Hello. I closed my eyes. Never have I been happier to hear her voice. Why is Kia's phone off? I growled. Hello to you too, Alejandro. The woman was so antagonizing at times. Pass it to Kiera. One silence followed, and I clenched my jaw. Was she doing this? Forsake, please. I added coldly. I'm not asking you to be friendly, Alejandro. It's just that Kiera isn't available right now. She replied calmly. What does she means unavailable? Scarlett. Where is Kiera? My stomach twisted, my heart thumping with unease. Don't tell me she left FFE. She went after Catalia. I closed my eyes, my aura flaring around me as her words sank in. Kiera was out there alone, phone off, with no one. She'll be okay. Alajan, do not tell me she'll be okay when my daughter is alone. And now Kiera? Why did you let her go? I hissed, standing up. I couldn't stay here when she was out there alone. She's a mother who had no faith in her mate. I said icily. I didn't care if those words were harsh because what I felt inside was worse. I was doing my best. I stuck up. Kot was gone because of me, and now Kiera decided to look for herself? I wasn't enough, and she had no faith in me. Alejandro, please don't think like that. She's only I cut the call, I did not need Scarlett talking to me. I needed to find Kiera now, too. My phone rang as I stood and answered it, glancing at the name Elijah. I had half a mind to let him know what his daughter had just done. I think I will. What is it? I asked coldly. I'm in Oxford, and there's been a sighting that may or may not help. Someone said they saw a mass of reddish-colored wolves. Although the older man seems a little lost in his head, I think it's all we have to go on. Perfect. I'll head there now. I closed my eyes, feeling some hope. By the way, Kiera left, and your maid allowed it. You know it's not safe out there. I growled. What? Elijah's voice was sharp, and I could hear its irritation. I smirked coldly. Yeah, exactly. She doesn't listen. I'm going to send a team out to find her, and I'm coming down to Oxford. If we have a lead, I'm not wasting more time allowing my baby girl to be alone for longer than necessary. Elijah sighed heavily. That makes sense. When you get here, you, Liam, and Rayhan can head forward. You'll find Kiera. Yeah, and let her know when I find her. She's in trouble. I growled, hanging up. My eyes blazed red. I swear if anything happens to her. I closed my eyes, running a hand through my hair and trying to control my anger. I told her I couldn't focus if she was out there. I told her to stay. I dialed Darien. That didn't answer because he was scared. I knew that much. Hi, Alpha. Hey. You couldn't keep Kiera there. Listen, she snuck out. No one realized. Oh yeah? I'll be sorting this out when I get home. For now, anything with my demand on the net. Nothing, maybe he hasn't seen it yet. Darien said, clearly nervous. Push for it to get more exposure. I want my girl back by all means. I ripped open the door to the bedroom and stormed downstairs. Al. Didn't you shower or I need to go? Kiera left to look for her, too, and Elijah may not have found a lead. You don't come, you need your rest. If not waiting for a reply, I shifted and rushed from the house. I spotted Leo sitting high up in a tree, smoking a cigarette as I ran past. My only aim was to get to Oxford and pray that my baby girl was somewhere there. As for Kiera, I frowned deeply. No matter how annoyed I was at her, the worry for her safety clawed at my mind and chest. Why was she so reckless? The trees were a blur as I zoomed through them as fast as possible. Tonight the moon was primarily hidden by clouds, and the night was still, yet that burden that hung above my head was looming heavily. I needed to fix this. I could hear the sounds of night animals outside my bedroom window hooting, howling, and crying out extremely loudly as I stared at the ceiling, lying on my bed's hard plank of wood. My room was luxurious enough, but as future Alpha, there were certain things I didn't need and shouldn't get used to. Like soft beds, for one, or blankets. As a werewolf, my body kept itself warm, and getting used to things was better than being spoiled with useless, unnecessary items. It had been a while since I talked to the Leakin's daughter, but I couldn't brush off how innocent she seemed. I know her father was a horrible person who owed my family a lot, and I know that, inevitably, she may die. But while she was alive, perhaps I could offer her some sympathy. Or something of the sort. I sat up, remembering how her dress was torn at her waist and covered in bloodstains. She had lost a lot of blood, too. I ran my hand through my black hair, sighing. It wasn't like me to show compassion, it was a weakness. Is this why the father says women are nothing more than to bear pups? Regardless, perhaps I should ask Mother. I got out of bed and exited my room. Father stayed on a separate floor from my mother and me. I guess that was convenient right now. I didn't like going behind his back, but something about the girl in the basement didn't sit right with me. I walked down the carpeted halls and knocked lightly on Mother's door. It was past 2 a.m., she was probably asleep. The door opened, and I looked up at her. Although Father said I shouldn't care for anyone, I dare not tell him that I care for Mother. I love her dearly, just as much as I love him. She had black hair and large hazel eyes similar to mine. Mi vida, what a surprise! Mother said softly. She wore an excellent mask, too. She knew Father's rules. Yes, I wanted to ask you something, if I'm not intruding. I stated. I wasn't allowed to visit her too often. My father said it made me weak and a waste of time. Of course not. She replied, smiling slightly. I walked into her room, and she closed the door. There's a girl in the basement, the Leakin's daughter. I visited her earlier. I know we shouldn't trust anyone or anything, no matter how helpless and innocent they may look, but I wondered how bad it would be to give her food. I asked. Mother's smile vanished, and I could hear her racing heartbeat. Mi vida, don't do it. She whispered. The Alpha will not forgive you. I tilted my head. He wouldn't need to know, and it was clear, despite Mother's refusal, I still wanted to. I understand. Good night. I turned and left the room swiftly. Mi vida. I ignored her and walked towards my room, hearing Mother sigh and closing the door to her room. I glanced back at it before changing direction and heading downstairs instead, making my way to the kitchen. I needed to take something that I could carry discreetly. We had ribs for dinner. Perhaps there's some left. I entered the large kitchen, and the silence was deafening. I opened the drawers, knowing I would have to hide the food when I went down. I took a plate and went to the fridge, assuming there were some leftover ribs and roast potatoes. I put them in the container with some spicy rice and placed them in the microwave. I've never really used this before. After pressing around on the random buttons, I finally got it figured out. The sound seemed to be blaring loud, and I hoped no one came to check. I frowned, wondering if Father would hear me. But he usually liked to have adult time at night, whatever that meant. Hopefully, he didn't listen to me. While the food was being heated, I busied myself with finding something to place the food in, and I rummaged around in the drawers until I found some kitchen foil and a freezer bag. This should do. I glanced towards the hallway before I spread 2 layers on the worktop and got the plate from the microwave. Placing the ribs, potatoes, and rice on the foil, I wrapped it up. She would have to make do without a spoon. I put the foil into the freezer bag, hoping it wouldn't smell too strongly. Going to the fridge, I grabbed a bottle of orange juice before sliding the hot food bag under my baggy top and leaving the kitchen. I headed towards the basement and saw only Ronaldo, one of the 4 brothers, standing there. Well, I am one of 3 brothers now. Open the door, I want to see the foolish thing, I stated emotionlessly. His gaze dipped to the bottle of orange juice in my hand, and I smoothly unscrewed the cap, taking a gulp. I just stopped by the kitchen for some food as I felt peckish, and now I can't sleep. I need to vent some anger. I'm sure Padre wouldn't care if she gets a little injured. I smirked coldly. He lowered his head. Yes, of course. The moment the door opened, I glanced at Ronaldo. Keep the door shut, I will knock when I'm done. I don't want anyone to get disturbed. He nodded, bowing to me, and the door shut behind me. I didn't hear her this time. I scanned the dark room below and saw her body on the floor near the sink. Had she tried to drink water? The tap was on, but it was apparent it didn't work. A dirty trickle of water was coming out of it. I took the food parcel from under my shirt and placed it on the floor with the juice bottle before walking over to her. I switched the tap off, frowning when she didn't stir. It seemed she had fallen unconscious. How weak! I've been without food for 2 weeks, several times. Father made. Sure, I learned how to cope, yet here was this little soft thing, unable to keep awake after a few days of no food. I crouched down when I suddenly realized her body was bruised. Those weren't there earlier. My heart began to race. She had been beaten. Had Father done this? My stomach twisted. I wasn't sure, but this wasn't right. Even if he were to kill her, why prolong the suffering? No, I shouldn't question Father. Oi, Chica, get up! I said, shaking her slightly. She whimpered, my eyes falling on the large bruise on her face. Had the father beaten a child? Sure, my training consisted of beatings, but that was for me to get stronger. I have brought you food, but if you do not get up, I can't help you. One still, she didn't get up. I frowned, lifting her body and carrying her to where I had left the food. How troublesome! I propped the life-size rag doll against the wall, prodding her head that lolled to the side. She looked a lot like a china doll. Creepily cute with too much hair. I don't have time for random thoughts. I tapped her cheek lightly, and her eyes fluttered open this time. Wake up, Chica! I whispered. Her eyes flew open, her heartbeat thundering as she flinched, ready to be hit again. I don't hit girls. I rolled my eyes and held the orange juice bottle to her. Confusion filled her dark eyes before she took it. Thank you. Her soft reply was rather pitiful as she sipped some of the juice with trembling hands, supporting the bottle. I quickly opened the plastic bag and unwrapped the foil. I prayed that the smell would vanish by tomorrow or Father might do worse. Is that for me? She asked. No, it's for me. I decided to come and eat down here because it's much more appealing than the dining room. I frowned. Of course, it's for you, but be quick. She was hesitant, almost wondering if this was a trick question. I thank you. Is that all you can say, Chica? My name is not Chica, it's Catalia. She said, giving me a smile that lit up her bruised face. My eyes widened in shock. Did she not realize I was the enemy? She slowly reached over, moving the foil closer to herself, cringing with pain that shot up her arm. Girls are so useless. I shook my head, pushing the foil paper towards her. Be quick, chica. Catalia, it was an interesting name. She reached for a potato first and looked at me as if waiting for me to beat her, but once she realized I wasn't going to do anything, she bit into it. We stayed silent as she dug in, even though I knew she was starved. Either she was far too weak to eat faster, or from what I could tell, she was eating with manners. Tears streamed down her cheeks silently as she ate, and they began to irk me. I'm sorry I couldn't bring a spoon or fork, I stated when the silence and awkwardness became too much, thinking I had also forgotten tissue. Instead, I tore off a square of my pajama sleeves and gave it to her. It's okay, this is more than enough. I am grateful for it. What is your name? She asked, taking the square of fabric and patting her lips. I frowned. Was it necessary? She would probably not live long. Enrique, Ignacio Escara, future alpha of the Fuego de Ceniza pack. I claimed proudly. Her eyes widened as she looked me over before fear flooded her eyes, and she shrunk into the wall. That man. Was he your papa? She whispered, utterly terrified, visibly beginning to tremble. I looked over the bruises on her tiny body and frowned. One yes. She nodded, gulping, but I could tell she was tense, her heartbeat was erratic and shaking. Finish the food, I don't have all day. I added coldly, getting up and turning away from her. I'm done. Thank you. She whispered. How foolish, did she not realize she wouldn't get more food here? Well, that was her loss. I wrapped the remaining food with the foil and shoved it into the plastic bag. Drink the juice, I commanded, glaring at her. She quickly obliged, fat tears rolling down her cheeks, but they only annoyed me even more. Padre is right, girls are useless. I pushed the empty orange juice bottle into the plastic bag and stood up, shoving it under my top, and made my way up the stairs without looking back. I had just about reached the door when it was pulled open before I even managed to knock, revealing none other than Father himself. His nostrils flared, and his eyes blazed goldish brown. Oh, did you give the girl food, Mojo? He asked me. His voice was scary, and I knew I would be punished. Yes, I did, Padre. I admitted, lowering my head to him in submission. He scoffed before he backhanded me across the face, sending me reeling into the door to the basement. The food packet slipped from under my top, falling to the ground as my vision spun from the sheer force of my father's hit. My head is pounding. Well, well, well. Enrique. What have I told you about rules and law? I must always abide by yours, Padre, and yet you didn't. I heard a quiet sob from down below and hurrying footsteps. Realizing what was about to happen, I frowned. The foolish chica was going to help me? She had a death wish. Father smirked as Catalia appeared behind me. Please don't hurt him, I promise I won't, he growled, suddenly lurching forward, kicking her square in the chest and back down the stairs. I heard her tiny body tumble down the stairs, but no sound escaped her. My heart thumped, I shouldn't have given her food. This was my fault. Father was about to descend the stairs when I stepped his way. Padre, I disobeyed and commanded her to eat. It is I who needs to be punished for defying you, I stated, praying the silly girl stayed down. Father frowned before smirking coldly. Indeed, Mojo, indeed. He painfully grabbed me by my hair, pulling me away from the door. Lock the door and make sure no one sees her. Father hissed, and I knew what would come when he dragged me outside. Lashing or a beating. The moment Father took his belt in his hand, I raised my head, prepared for what was to come. After all, I had learned how to handle this. I closed my eyes when the first hit connected to my back. Father would unleash all his anger upon me, but it was the right of the alpha. This is how I would learn to be the best kind of alpha, don't feel. When the first rays of dawn began to appear, that instinct I had been following through the night suddenly vanished. My wolf fell silent, and I suddenly felt all alone. I was exhausted from the running as well. Should I stop and take a small break? Maybe it would be better if I did, but I won't be for long. Catalia was out there, and I needed to find her. I wondered if Alejandro found out I had left already. I'm sure he probably tried calling at some point. I shifted and dropped to my knees in exhaustion. I opened my bag and pulled out some sweatpants and a crop top, putting them on quickly before sitting back, feeling the pain in my legs and arms. Goddess! Catalia! I hope she was okay, wherever she was. I would never be able to forgive myself if something happened to her. Please let her be safe. I stared at the sky, my heart clenching with worry as I tried to compose myself. The distant whimper of my wolf in my head told me she was still upset. We are going to find her, okay? I said my wolf, although I knew I wouldn't get an answer. I ripped open a granola bar and bit into it, and I took out my phone and switched it on. The shattered screen was still working. For now, I hoped it would make do for a while. I sighed, seeing the 37 missed calls. 03 from Alejandro. 20 from Dad. Goddess, Dad, relax. 4 from Raven, 2 from Rayhan, 3 from Darien, and 5 from Liam. I sighed so the entire population knew I had vanished. I looked at my messages, my heart thudding at the single letter from Alejandro. I asked you for one thing. One thing, to stay safe. Seriously, Kia? Just upping and leaving like that? I had half a mind to ask Ri to find you. Call me when you see this. Asuf. I closed my eyes. He was annoyed, as I expected him to be. I needed to call him. I skimmed through the other messages. Dad and Liam were stressing out like it was the end of the world. Dad was incredibly annoyed off as well, also warning me that Alejandro was furious, and he should be. Was I 16 or something? These men were being ridiculous. I understood their point, but I was not an incapable woman who would sit at home while my daughter was out there. I'm sure I could help find her. The more of us looking, the better. My irritation and restlessness were flaring up, and before I could even do anything else, Dad's incoming call came again, and I sighed, answering it. Hell, Kiera, why did you leave? Why was your phone off all night? What if something happened? You and your mother do not listen, Dad. I cut him off. Calm down. I'm fine and can't answer in wolf form, can one? I think you and Alejandro forget that I am not a child anymore. I'm capable enough to help look for Catalia, and I'm sure the more people looking, the better. Please understand that. We know that, but we also know that even Alejandro couldn't deter these wolves when he had taken down hundreds of wolves single-handedly in his teens. These wolves are something else, Kiera, and nothing to be taken lightly. Dad growled. I frowned. I knew that, Dad. I'm not stupid. Kiera, you were the one who found these notes. Don't you think Alejandro is worried that something may happen to you, just like Dante is cursed? Okay, I didn't think of that, but I was okay. Dad, she's my daughter. I will not sleep on a bed, not knowing how she is doing. She must be terrified. How do you expect me to sit at home? Please, Dad, let's not do this. I almost pleaded, unable to hide the pain in my voice. He sighed heavily in defeat. I understand, but we were on it. We will get our Catalia back. Where are you? I was following my instincts. You know how I've always been able to sense this stuff? What if I can find her? I'm not that far out from your pack. Just south. I said quietly. That in itself makes me think we all may be on to something. We got the news that there were some odd occurrences near Oxford. If you're heading south, stay that way. Maybe we are close. My heart leaped at his word. Any clue or sighting was hope. Understood. Kiera. Wait for Alejandro, though. My heart was pounding with hope, and when I cut the call, I quickly dialed Alejandro's. His phone rang, and after a few moments, he answered. Let me speak. I said before he could even answer. Please. Do I have a choice? You'll just hang up and continue doing whatever you want if I don't. I winced at the anger in his voice. It hurt having that rage directed at me. I couldn't deny that. But we weren't going to agree, and I didn't want to argue. This was about our daughter, and I was going to help find her. So then just listen. I said stubbornly, resulting in a murderous growl ripping through the phone. I exhaled slowly, trying to stay calm. I am not far from Oxford. I'll join you there, but if you even think about sending me home, I won't listen, Alejandro. I heard him sigh in irritation, and when he spoke, frustration was evident in his tone. Fine. He replied through gritted teeth. I'm heading towards Oxford now. I'll meet you there. I replied quietly. It hurt so much that I realized how angry he was at me, but I couldn't voice what I felt inside. This pain of having her away from me was killing me. I wish he could understand how hard it was being a mother, unable to do anything for our daughter, and not even knowing how she was. Was she fed? Was she safe? How far are you? He asked me, his voice as cold and emotionless as when he spoke to others. Not too far. I should be there in a few hours. The silence between us was so tense and painful that it wasn't like ours. But right now, we had different mindsets, and there was nothing I could say would change his anger or make him realize how I felt. I'll see you soon. I whispered. I hung up. My heart was aching as I stared at my shattered phone screen, sighing heavily. I better get up and head out. Alejandro was waiting for me. Replacing everything in my bag, I shifted and began running once again, not caring for the pain in my body as I ran. Determination fueled me as I made my way through the forest and towards Oxford. Catalia, I'm coming for you, my angel. An hour had passed since I had been traveling, and then suddenly, that instinct that had filled me returned once again. I tensed. Could something be here? I looked around, scanning the area. On one side, there were hills and bushes, along with many trees scattered to one side. We were in the countryside. To the right were some fields of farms. My wolf was restless after being silent for so long, telling me to go forward, and I did, my heart thrumming with panic and anticipation. Was Catalia close? After a good 15 minutes, I became confused. There was nothing out of the ordinary here. I slowly continued on my way, my eyes darting around, my senses on alert. I sniffed the air, my ears perking, trying to pick up on anything that was unusual. Was there perhaps a cavern or something? Slowly observing the ground, I tried to pick up any footprints, any track marks that would give me a clue to what was around here. After a good 15 minutes, I saw the paw prints on the ground. Faint, but they were there. My heart was beating erratically. Was I onto something? I padded along slowly, taking note of every inch, every millimeter of the ground. My heart began thumping fast as I realized that they were becoming more and more frequent, clear signs that wolves had been here. The size of the paw prints belonged to no ordinary wolf, but werewolves with big paws and claws. From what I knew, there was no pack around here, and it was clear these paw prints had tried to be covered up. If I hadn't been observing, I would have missed them. After another 20 minutes, there was still nothing, but my intuition was becoming more assertive. I paused, wondering if I should call Alejandro, but what if I was something? What if it was just a false alarm, and I called him away? Somewhere closer to Catalia? I'll keep searching for a bit longer and take it from there. I was about to lose hope as I was taken out of the forest and towards open countryside, feeling unsure if I should continue or not, about to turn away, when I saw it. It was nothing out of the ordinary, just one of several similar places I had just passed, but something about it gave me the chills. It was a large country home with grey walls. It was huge. Many trees surrounded the building beyond the gates, black iron gates with sharp spears and barbed wire at the top that was made to keep trespassers out. These metal fences surrounded the entire property. I couldn't sense anything or anyone around. However, my wolf kept telling me to go forward, urging me to, so I listened. Could this be where she was being kept? The thought that I may be close made my heart leap in excitement. I looked beyond the gates, and in the distance, past the bushes and trees, I could see the enormous house or manor. There was no life or light in the windows, not an animal or person in the surrounding gardens. But still, I felt like I should go check it out. How do I get in? Do I see if there's any broken part in it and just sneak in? It sounded like a plan. Let's do this. Something at the back of my mind told me that I should stop, shift, and let Alejandro know where I was first. But the more vital part of me was telling me to keep on going forward, something that said to me that my daughter was here, and I couldn't ignore that voice. Still, for Catalia, I should tell Alejandro just in case she was there. I quickly shifted, took the phone out, and sent a quick message. I'm at this location, I feel as if there's something here, I thought I'll let you know before I check it out. I don't know if I'm even on to something, but I feel she's here. I text before sharing my location. Putting the phone on silent, I slipped it back into my bag and shifted into my wolf again. I broke into a run, rushing around the premises, keeping alert in case anyone was out there because there would be some security if they were even here. My eyes darted around, searching for a way in, but there wasn't one. I frowned, and then I knew what I was going to do. Jump the wall. I looked up at the vast iron fences. They were at least 20 feet high. If I got caught on one, it wouldn't be pretty. Then Kia, you have to ensure you aren't impaled on it. I began to back away, putting space between me and the deadly wall that promised to kill me. With my bag in my mouth, I took a deep breath of determination and ran towards the considerable metal wall of spears before I leaped into the air, my purple aura blazing around me as I launched myself over the fence. I reined my aura in, my heart thumping, knowing anyone could have sensed my ability. I felt the spears graze the underside of my belly, making me growl internally. Agonizing pain tore through me, and I bit back a whimper. It was more than what an average cut should have been. The agony was far more than a normal wound. I couldn't breathe for a second, and I grunted. There had to be some sort of poison on those spears. I landed on the other side of my feet, hissing slightly as I dropped my bag. This hurt. I glanced around quickly, hoping that nobody saw me before I promptly shifted back. I took out an oversized hoodie and the second pair of sweatpants I had, examining my stomach before pulling them on. The cuts were quite bad, but I couldn't smell any poison or anything. What was this? I quickly rummaged in my bag and took out one of the antidote vials. I wasn't sure if the spikes contained silver or wolfsbane, but I would not risk it. Goddess! I downed the vial quickly and put the empty bottle back in my bag before picking it up and walking towards the country house silently. I made sure to stick to the sides, kept hidden by the trees and trees lining the property. No one was still coming for me, maybe I had been wrong. Otherwise, I should have been attacked by now. My wolf was calm once again, too relaxed. I couldn't even sense her emotions. How strange. I took my phone out, wondering if Alejandro had seen my message. That's risky, Kia, wait for us. I'll be there at 15. One frowned but nodded. He wasn't wrong, I needed to be careful. Okay. I'm on the property, though, I'll hide. I texted back. By the looks of it, the property was lived in. I could see that clearly from the way the house was well kept, and unmistakable marks of footprints covered the ground. I kept to the shadows, trying to find the best place to lay low, when I felt that same ominous aura behind me that I had felt when Dulsanra had performed that spell on Dante. My heart thumped in my chest, and I spun around quickly, tossing my phone into the bushes. But before I could even see or take in anything else, something grabbed my throat. Pain seared through me as if I was being burned to death. A shriek left my lips as the pain hammered my entire body. Pure agony was ripping through me. It was an excruciating pain that made my head and my body scream for reprieve. What? I can handle pain usually. This. Whatever was holding onto me was like poison and death itself. I felt my energy drained as I struggled to free myself from everything I had, but it was futile. My attacker was unseen as it slammed me against a tree, but it was there, and I could feel its darkness and power. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't. I clawed at the invisible hands that squeezed my neck. I could see the blood dripping down my neck and smell it in the air. Goddess! Catalia! No! I couldn't let this happen. I had to be strong for her. Summoning everything I had, with a burst of energy, my eyes blazed purple. I was not weak. I was not going to succumb to this. With strength that I did not even know I still had, I pushed whatever was holding me away from me, my aura swirling around me like a shield. Do not mess with me! I growled venomously. The dark entity that I couldn't see pressed against my barriers, and I heard it hiss as it moved away. So, whatever it was, it couldn't go against my fence. Good. Because I was not here to lose. Not when my daughter was close. When I thought I might win this round, loud growls erupted in the air, and I spun around just as 6 blazing urban reddish-brown wolves lunged at me, their eyes glowing like burning embers. I couldn't even move out of the way. The impact knocked me to the ground, 2 biting into me viciously. I kicked them off, my anger flaring up. I demand to speak to the Crimson King. I growled ferociously. The command in my voice emanated throughout the area, and I saw the hesitation in the wolves as they exchanged looks. So, I was correct. This was the home of the Crimson King. Which meant Catalia was here. She was here, and I was going to find her. Mama's coming, baby girl, just hold out till we got you. The wolves oversaw me as I got to my feet, my aura still swirling around me. As much as I wanted to rip them all to pieces for everything they had done, I knew I wouldn't win. The bites in my thigh and hip were painful, but nothing was as wrong as the after effect of the unseen entity. I didn't move, hoping they understood I was waiting for their reply. I felt they were conversing with one another from the way they were looking at each other until one of them shifted into a man with pale skin and flaming red hair. His eyes held such a coldness, that they didn't seem human. The queen has come to get her pup, all alone. His voice was as bitter and cold as the rest of him, filled with disgust and hatred toward me. He had an accent. Spanish? Well, the feeling was mutual. Yes, I'm here for my pup and will not leave without her. As for anyone who has hurt her, I will unleash hell. Now show me to your king, who wants something from us. Let's see what this debt is regarding. One of the other men who had shifted now had my bag, and even though I tried to reach out through the link, either Alejandro was too far out, or something was blocking me from communicating with him because all I could feel was the block. I just prayed he got my location notification and that my phone didn't break completely. It was apparent whatever that thing earlier was didn't care about the phone. Was it the djinn? I shuddered inwardly at the very thought. I had to play this safe, even if it meant stalling for time. We just needed to get Catalia out. I just needed my baby girl safe. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.